Welcome to the Startup Grind.
Okay, let's give a big welcome to José Vélez. Okay, José, thanks for coming. Welcome. I'd like to start. Okay, I'm so happy that you're here. I mean, you're the CEO of PayU Latam, which is one of the biggest players in payments in Latin America. I'd like to also thank our sponsor first, Colony, which is a great co-working space here in Bogota. But I'd like to do like a little run through of how you got started and everything, and really way back when you were born. So what was the household like where you were born? You were born here in Bogota, I imagine.
Yeah.
And were your parents entrepreneurs, etc.?
Okay. So I was born in a middle-class family. Mm-hmm. My parent is a math teacher, and my mother was the principal from a college. So both my parents were into education.
Interesting. Okay.
And I think I happened to be entrepreneur by accident.
So how did that happen? So you're growing up in that household, two teachers or two people in education?
Two teachers. Mm-hmm. My mother was the principal of college.
Yeah.
I think she somehow has a little bit of entrepreneurial blood, but not too much. I think she did it most to help the community than anything else. But she was very independent. I think that's something I learned from her.
Okay.
And my father is a math physics teacher. He never wanted to have he just wanted to enjoy reading his books and no material things. And yeah, I grew in that environment.
Okay, and as a kid, like, what did you like to do? What kind of things did you do?
I was a very, intellectually active kid. Okay. So my father, since he was a math teacher, he was interested in computers, how to program and stuff like that. So he bought an Apple IIe, if I don't remember, but I think that's the name, when I was very young.
Like how old? Like 10?
10, 11, okay. 11 years. So he bought the computer and he started to teach me how to program in Logo, I remember.
Wow. Okay.
There was a turtle that you could move around in the screen, the green screen.
Yeah.
So he taught me how to program in a turtle, and then I like it a lot and started to learn by myself. So then I learned how to program in BASIC and how to program different things, and then I was a geek. I spent most of my teenager age at the computer.
And what did you do with that? Like just do programs for yourself, or did you ever sell those services?
Different things. So at the beginning it was more for fun. And when I was like 15, 16, somehow I ended up doing programs for university students that were having problems in his programming signatures. So they hired me to do their programs. So that's how I started to build my business. And then I started to teach them. So I offer private classes of how to program when I was very young. And I started to build my own clientele.
Okay, so when you were 15, that's when you started to do your entrepreneurial stuff?
Something like that,
okay.
Yeah.
Did you always feel like you wanted to do something like that? Like be an entrepreneur? Or did you just like fall into it? It just happened?
It just happened.
Okay.
I never thought about my future life. I was just... So I never thought I would like to build a company or be an entrepreneur. I just like... It led itself.
Okay.
It led itself. And then I started to build computers. So I learned how to assemble computers. And I got a couple of providers here in Colombia. So I started to build computers for family and friends and so on. So I bought the parts, get them together, nice features, very good quality, and I sold them. I made good money.
All right.
It took me like 10 years to make the same amount of money that I made at the 16. I think almost 30, I started to make the same amount
So
of
that
money
was-
that I was making when
Was
I was
that around
very
when Dell was growing and
Yeah.
compact computer and all that stuff?
And you have a lot of clones.
Yeah.
And in Colombia, you could go to Unilago to buy computers.
Yeah.
But if you are someone that does not know a lot of computers, you don't know what to buy.
Yeah.
So I found a couple of good providers, very nice box, good quality, good guarantee.
So why didn't you keep doing that? It was I saw your LinkedIn profile. I know you went to university. Why didn't you keep doing that? Why did you decide to go to college?
No, I always thought I needed to go to university.
Okay.
So what happened is that I finished my school, and after school I had to do conscription, military conscription. And while at the military, I started to do some stuff for them. And by pure luck, I saw a proposal for the first web page of the military, and they were charging them like $1 million.
And you were a soldier.
And I was a soldier.
Okay.
So I don't remember exactly how, but I talked with the colonel that was in charge of the base I was based, and I told him, hey, they are robbing you. Let me go to my house. I will buy a book on how to do web pages, and I will do it for free. So he said, okay, that's fine. I went to my house, bought a book, and started to build web pages. That's how I built my first web page. I think I built the first web page for the military in Colombia.
And was it for free?
For free.
And then with that, having that under your belt, then I guess you started selling those services, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That was my first website.
Okay.
So after finishing my conscription, I started my studies in the university. So I didn't know what to study. I like math a lot. I like reading, so I was thinking on literature. And systems, I was very good. But I thought if I studied software engineering, I am an introvert, I'm shy. So I thought if I study system engineering, I will be even more introvert, so I will have more tough time getting a girlfriend. So, so I decided to study economy. And that's why I ended up studying economy.
Okay.
I did not finish engineering. I did a couple of courses of both. But then I decided to do my master's degree in engineering, but my minor degree in economics.
And where'd you do that?
Here in Colombia, it's Universidad de los Andes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you study at all in this, in England or somewhere outside of Colombia?
But later on,
Okay.
I went to a special course for entrepreneurs in Columbia University.
Interesting. Okay.
In New York.
Okay.
But it was recent, like 3 years ago.
Okay. So when you graduated from college, then you did what everybody does. You got a job.
No. So when I started university, I started to get referrals to build websites.
Okay.
So I built the first website for RCN, the biggest
the television station.
station here in Colombia. And I built the first website of Los Coches, one of the biggest auto retailers in the country. I built the website for Noel. That was a long time ago.
Humongous conglomerate here in Colombia.
Yeah. So I was doing very well. I did it by myself, and then I started to hire mates from the university to help me with these websites. And then Martin's friends, one of the co-founders of PayU, referred me to his brother. His brother was very successful in England. He had a web shop.
Okay.
So he started to send me work also.
Okay.
So I was doing like offshore development here in Colombia for him while I was doing my university studies.
Okay.
So when I was about to finish the university, my minor, I did an interchange program in Martin's brother company with the idea to learn how they were doing things and to start an offshore software factory here in Colombia.
So your co-founder's brother's
Yeah.
company.
Yes, exactly.
And what kind of company was that?
At the time, he was going to be the next billionaire. he was the owner of accommodation search engine. And at the time, he had the domain name hotels.com.
Hotels.com.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he had the search engine hotels.com, and I went to work in hotels.com. So at the time I worked in hotels.com for 6 months.
Okay.
I work in search engine optimization for hotels.com. So I went there to learn how they did things and so on, with the idea to start the business in Colombia, because in theory it was 1/3 of the cost to do it here than there.
And there was where?
In England. I work in very close by to London.
Okay.
Yeah, in Suffolk.
Okay.
And I came to Colombia. I convinced Martin to come to Colombia. He was living in UK.
Yeah.
To come to Colombia to start the company with me, with the idea to do offshore development for his brother.
Okay.
He had a job in a bank, but he always wanted to be an entrepreneur. So he said, "Okay, let's do it." He came to Colombia. We started the company, and Martin brother said, "I don't trust. It's too far away. I don't want to do it." So Martin had resigned to his job, moved to Colombia, but we didn't have the business. Yeah. So we said, "Okay, let's keep on." He bought a flight to UK and just went there to find customers, and we had a couple of customers. We did manage to sell like maybe $1 million in software development for the UK.
In how much time? In a year?
In a year, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
1 year, 1 million revenues, and I was 23.
Okay.
So
you had graduated by then?
No, I was finishing my university.
Okay.
So I went. Maybe with 1 year before finishing my university, I went to the UK. I don't remember the exact dates. Came back, keep working 6 months, graduated, and started my master's degree. Okay. And meanwhile, we were doing this software development company. 1 year and a half, 2 years afterwards, a friend came by, and he told us that he wanted to receive payments online. He was selling a lot in Mercado Libre and the Remate, eBays of Latin America.
eBay of Latin America. Huh?
eBay Latin America, and he needed he needed to receive credit cards online. Okay. So he proposed us to start up a new company to receive payments, and that's how we started. So it was by chance. I mean, it was not we didn't do a macro analysis, and we didn't do.
It was opportunistic. Somebody said, and it was called Pagos Online back then.
It was called Pagos Online back then. Pagosonline.net, because pagosonline.com was already bought.
Okay.
So we bought the domain pagosonline.net, and that's how we started. Okay. We started 12 years ago.
12 years ago. So hardly anybody was doing e-commerce here.
There was no e-commerce in Colombia. I think we started way too soon.
So you started that business, and did that customer come through? Like you actually were able to close that customer that your friend had said?
So my friend was selling. Yeah. He was a power seller. He was selling a lot of things in the Remate and Mercado Libre. And he had good relationships with Mercado Libre and the Remate. And Mercado and the Remate offered us the possibility to be their platform. Okay. So at the beginning, we worked very hard to offer them the service, but at the end, the deal didn't went through. So we started to find merchants by ourselves.
Yeah, that was the .com era.
Yeah.
Right before the
2000.
Bubble.
No, it was a little bit after 2002.
Okay, right after the bubble. And so that would have been great, but that didn't come through. So you guys started to find other e-commerce players. Yeah. Okay, which were very few, I'm sure.
Very few. I mean, a lot of tiny volumes. Tiny volumes. I remember a conversation with Martin where I said to him, "Martin, we are never going to process 1,000 transactions in a month." And today we process 1,000 transactions in 10 minutes. But I remember that conversation so well. Martin, we are never going to make money.
So I'm not going to ask you which one of the two is the optimist. So back then, I'm sure you didn't make any mistakes when you launched. So what happened like when you launched it?
We did many mistakes. We were not the first payment company in Colombia. I think we were the second one. There was another one. So when we launched, the other company was what we learned from after a couple of, I think after some time we learned a basic truth, which is there was no e-commerce in Colombia. So if we wanted to survive, we had to figure out a way to get money without transactions. And that's why for a long time we charged to open an account, because we lived from the account opening fee, but not from the transactions, because there were no transactions. And
so you were just signing up people and then you'd collect that setup fee.
And that's how we became specialists in selling merchant accounts with a setup fee.
Okay.
And I remember that we had special prices in the company to the sales guys. The trip to Cartagena to the sales executive that sells 100 accounts this month. And it was massive effort, and it was very, very nice times, but very complicated because there was no e-commerce.
Okay. So at that time, how did everything go? Like, I'm sure it didn't go smoothly. What was like the scariest thing that happened?
After 3 years, I think, the bank called us and said, hey, you owe us, let's say, $30,000. You need to pay tomorrow. And what? Yeah, you receive a lot of credit card payments, and those credit card payments were fraudulent. So you owe us money. Because when you are selling online, the liability is on the merchant, because you are not in presence of the cardholder. So the liability shifts to the merchant. So we didn't know we had that liability at the moment. And we were really young.
And you were the merchant of record? Because there's a possibility that...
We were the merchant of record, because we are an aggregator, a PSP. So we didn't have the money, and it was very rough times. So we were 3 founders at the time: Martin, Santiago, and myself. Santiago was the Mercado Libre seller.
Okay.
And he gave up. He said, no, I don't want to keep working doing this. And Martin and myself put our savings, everything we had, to pay the bank.
Yeah.
And we made the decision at that time that it would never happen again. And we started to work really hard on building an anti-fraud system, which is what has kept us a little bit ahead of our competition in Colombia.
It's a big differentiator.
It was our biggest differentiator. But we were almost bankrupt. We even had I remember we had a board meeting, and one of the board members knew the other payment company, and he told us, they started before you are screwed, you have to close the company. And we didn't believe him, fortunately. But that was the main conclusion. The conclusion of the board meeting is we should close the business. And we didn't close, we paid the bank, and we started to work on the anti-fraud model.
Okay.
That was, I think that was one of our most difficult times.
Okay, so one of the reasons I'm so happy that we're talking is because there's a lot of firsts with your company and you guys. So one of the firsts was that there came to a point where you guys said, man, starting a payments company is hard work. And you just actually said that to me before we started the interview. So usually when you start a payments company, you have investment. And there came a point when you were looking for an investment.
Yeah.
And when nobody was investing in startups in Colombia, especially. There's not a ton of people right now investing in startups, but then there was nobody. So how was that experience?
So I would say 7 years ago, 6-7 years ago, we were approached by an Argentinian company, and they are called Dinero Mail. The Argentinian company was founded by the ex-founders of the Remate, very famous entrepreneurs in Latin America.
The other eBay.
The other eBay, They're very famous, very successful. And then they basically offer to buy us. And when we look at them, they had already presence in several countries of Latin America. They had VC investment, several $1 million. At the time, we didn't know even that they were VCs. So we said, okay, we have done our job. We're a tiny company in Colombia. We need to sell, and we will own a small part of a bigger company in the region. And we actually signed the contract with Dinero Mail. Because up to that time, we had grown organically.
Was it a contract or was it like a term sheet? Like, yeah,
No,
in principle.
no, a contract.
A contract.
We
okay.
signed everything.
Yeah.
And actually, I went to live to Argentina, and Martin went to live to Mexico. I was the COO of the merged company. So we signed the contract. We started to behave as if, we signed the contract.
Yeah.
The problem was that we didn't receive the payment when
Small
the payment
detail. Just a small detail.
when the payment was due. So we rolled back the transaction.
Okay.
But in process, we learned a couple of very nice things. The first thing is that they were really good sales guys, but they were very bad at operations.
And not only good sales guys for selling their products, selling their company too.
Everything
right?
they were really, they're good entrepreneurs, but they lack like a little bit more structure. After working for them in Argentina, Martin working for them in Mexico, we understood the importance of being more structured, especially in a payments company, because our margins are so thin that if we screw up, it's so easy to lose money in a payments company. So we learned that, and we learned that if we wanted to be successful, at least in Latin America, we had to offer a regional proposition. Being local our markets are very small to make meaningful money. To build a big business, you have to go cross-border. And we learned that. So we started to look for money 6 years ago. And I think we went to almost all the big families in Colombia. And they were interested, but not so much. It was too risky. So at the end, after 1 year after looking for money, one VC said that they wanted to invest in us. But unfortunately, and their terms were really, really tough. For example, we couldn't leave for the next 5 years. If we leave, then we would lose all our shares. Or we had received recently a small angel investment, and the valuation they gave us was below the angel investment. So we had to dilute, we have to give, it was a tough time. We have to give part of our shares to compensate the angel to be able to receive the VC investment. And when we were about to close the deal, we were very lucky. And a company in Brazil, Buscapé,
which is part of Naspers.
Which is part of Naspers now, approached us and said they were interested in buying us. And we said, no, we are not interested in selling. And we are already closing with a VC. And they said to us, whatever they are offering you, we will give you twice.
Without
like
even
that.
knowing what the is, we'll double it. Okay.
Yeah, like the internet bubble. So we said, okay, let's hear. And they gave off. It was true.
Yeah.
They offered twice everything, and the conditions were much, much better. So we decided at that point in time, we knew that to make money, we had to be regional. To make money in payments is very tough. You have to have huge scale to make good money.
You need investment to get to that scale.
You need to get investment, and we wouldn't get the investment in Colombia. So we said, let's sell the majority. We're going to receive a big investment. We are going to be minority shareholders of a very huge corporation, that's doing a lot of investment in emerging markets. And we sold the majority stake to Buscapé. It was 5 years ago. And since then, we have received a lot of help, resources, and everything to grow our business. Our revenues are 25 times now than they were when we closed with them. And for us personally, although we sold the majority stake, has been a great success. 25 times is big.
And how about people-wise? So 25 times in revenue, and how many people were working there when you sold the company?
I guess it was like 40.
40, and now?
We are 270.
Okay.
5 times, 6 times.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, and so in these last 5 years, now this is another first. I haven't, there's probably 1 or 2 more examples, but there's very few here in Colombia. So you have a big player who's willing to keep on investing in the business. Yeah. And that's very rare here. Usually there's not somebody like that. So How has that changed the company, changed you guys as entrepreneurs? What have you learned along the way in these 5 years? What are the things that stick out? Like, I'm sure there's a ton of stuff.
It's very, very tough to build a regional company.
Okay.
It's very tough. So one of the things we have learned is that the operational model is very important. There are different ways to cook.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to be successful, and if you want to get the economies of scale of technology, you have to have a good operating model. At the beginning, we struggled a little bit with it. So we now have a streamlined, we have a very lean operating model, or a lean one, or more lean than what we had. We still need to work on it. But it's been a good learning process.
Let's go deeper into that. So at the beginning, I think you probably had, and you kind of told me this before we started the interview, you kind of had like the traditional mentality. Okay, if we're going to grow a bigger organization, it's going to be traditional. We're not going to have a lot of middle managers, things like that. Talk to me a little bit about your thinking back then and how that just has changed recently.
So it's very easy to fall into the trap that every problem, you need to assign a person, an employee, to fix a problem. So since we are growing so fast, you always see a lot of problems. So you start to hire and hire and hire and hire people. But what you don't realize is that there is a communication overhead. And the communication overhead can be huge. So if the company starts to grow too fast, the communication overhead gets so big that you are slower than you were before. So it is not so true that having 200 employees, you are going to go faster than with 100. Actually, I think if you manage to have only 100, you will go much faster, because this communication overhead is very important. And above that, if you create several layers of management, the communication overhead explodes. So at the time we were thinking we had to fix this, we are going to hire this one, we will have to fix this, we are going to hire this one. And then at that point we realized this is not going to work. So we decided to go back to our core. We were a tiny startup where we could be really agile, lean, fast.
Like a flatter organization.
Flatter organization, and pay attention to the key things and learn how to live a little bit with chaos in all things that are not important. Mm-hmm. So you have always the tendency to start to build processes, but you have to know which processes are critical, which processes bring value to the organization. Not all the process, you don't need to spend so much time in building process for everything, but for the core thing you are doing is critical to have good processes, but maybe you can live without process for other things. Less control. So that's what we have learned. I think we were building a command and control organization. Mm-hmm.
Which is very traditional.
Which
also
is very
in
traditional
Colombia.
in Colombia, Latin
in the world,
America.
but especially in Colombia, very command and control.
Very.
Uh-huh.
And we are living that. We are living that, and since we have changed the way we run the business, we are growing much faster.
How do you prevent it from being anarchy? Like if it's too flat, everybody's doing their own thing. Like what are little things that you do to align everybody?
It's not easy, but when I think about it like a software.
Yeah.
So you can have spaghetti software, and you can have an spaghetti organization. What I mean by this is that if everybody depends on everybody, it gets difficult to get things done. If you have to ask 10 persons to do anything, then it's going to take time. So what we have learned is that if you define clear responsibilities and you avoid lots of unnecessary interactions between the different teams, you can go faster. Mm-hmm. That's one thing we have learned. So it's reducing like trust more the employees to take decisions, so they don't have to consult everybody to do something.
How was it to get to that? Like for you personally, like to let go?
For me, I think it was not so much for me, but it was more for the senior managers.
Oh yeah, okay.
So, for example, last year we decided to remove one layer in the organization, and everybody was very skeptic. And they were saying, especially because I ended up having like 15 direct reports. And everybody was very skeptic. How are you going to be able to manage so many people? And I said, I won't need to manage them. They will manage themselves. So they didn't believe, but after seeing some results, and if you give more responsibility to someone, he will feel more accountable.
And he'll have more ownership.
More ownership.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. A sensible.
So it's been a very interesting process.
Okay. How much, I know with Buscapé, another cool thing is that you guys get to go see all their other investments, or a lot of their investments, and like learn from them. How important has that been?
It has been very important. It's been very interesting to see different companies worldwide. I have gone to so many different places. And one of the things you learn is what I'm telling you. You have to be very careful to keep the organization lean, so it can move fast. So you don't become the next company that's going to be disrupted by the newcomer. So it's very, very, very interesting. One of the things is there is a metric in human resources, like the span of control. Mm-hmm. And you learn that in software companies, the span of control is critical. Span of control is how many employees you have per manager. So you have a span of control of 4 or 5. It means you have a very rigid structure. You have to push yourself to move it further. And that's one of the things that I learned in some parts of the world. They speak in Europe. They speak about it. I have never in my life heard about it before. And it's been very interesting, and it's been also very enlightening to see that we have similar challenges. Mm-hmm. And what's happening with e-commerce, and especially with payments, is the globalization. I mean, the players now are trying to be global, and it's happening what we feared 5 years ago. That by being alone in Colombia, we would not make a big difference. And it's happening right now. You can see Stripe expanding globally. You can see PayPal doing its own IPO. You can see other companies like Aiden. There are many companies. And what's happening is that they're building up a platform to sell off the whole world. So if we hadn't done that before, we would be struggling right now.
Okay, so talking a little bit about that. 5 years ago, like the things that you were worried about, do you think, so that's one where you were right to be worried about that. How about other things that you were like thinking, wow, this really worries me? Is there anything that ended up not being such a problem, and there was something that you hadn't considered that became something?
Yeah, the market size, I think we were right. Mm-hmm. To build a big company in Latin America, I think you have to be in more than one country. Probably you can get with it in Brazil if you are successful. Mm-hmm. But apart from that, you can't. So from day zero, it's important that you start thinking, I'm going to build something regional at least.
And what surprised you in these last 5 years that you hadn't really thought of that much? Like 5 years ago, that was going to be a big issue.
No, I don't.
Or internal stuff?
What I have seen, mm-hmm. What I realize now is that in payments there is a huge opportunity, but it is evolving very rapidly, really rapidly. And it's one of the toughest industries to be around. Because a lot of competition, a lot of innovation, and it's getting faster. So 3 years... We didn't have Apple Pay 1 year ago. Right. And Apple Pay is disrupting the States, the payment ecosystem. Stripe was not present. It was like born like 3-4 years ago. Mm-hmm. So now we have these huge China competitors, Alipay, for example, or Tenpay. So it's getting more and more competitive.
Okay.
Yeah, it's tough. Mm-hmm. And globalization, you see it. Now it's getting more tougher to be a single country. You have to compete globally, but it gets tougher because you are competing in a different league.
Okay, so let's go into that. So Argentina has Mercado Libre. Brazil has, well, it has Buscapé, but Colombia really hasn't produced
No.
that many, or I can't actually think of a one. There's probably one or two, like regional players.
Yeah.
You said it's really hard. What else can you tell us about what makes it so hard, and why do you think Colombia hasn't produced any more regional players?
I think because there hasn't been a first big success. And investors have to see the success to follow. For example, Mercado Libre, I think they were partially lucky because they got their investment when there was the internet boom.
Right.
And they received enough investment to make something big.
Mm-hmm. And they were wise in not spending it so fast compared to the other guys.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing you realize with time is that at the end, technology really matters. Technology is really matters when you want to make a difference.
For some companies, that's the boring part. Like,
No.
we're selling. The technology will come later.
No.
But you're saying it turns out that it actually is really important.
They say that you can see it if your competitor is able to deliver features faster than you, then eventually they will win you. So it's one of the key challenges we have had is how to build a really agile development team, which is not easy, especially in Colombia, because there is not much know-how. I mean, we develop, and there are developers and good developers, but there are not many companies that releasing software every day or every week or every 2 weeks.
Right. Most developers work for big corporations, banks.
Big corporations.
Like
There are many startups that are managing 100 developers, and it's been a tough time because we have to learn it by ourselves. So I think eventually that will leak into the rest of the startups, into the companies, and the amount of investment is critical. Mm-hmm. A regional company needs an order of magnitude more money than a local one. So you have to convince investors to believe in your idea.
There's something else that you guys have a lot of firsts or a lot of experience in a lot of areas. One area is Buscapé bought you guys, but they also bought another payments company.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about that and what's happened since they bought both of you.
Yeah, they bought Dinomail, the company that they wanted
that was going to buy you.
Buy us. So the
world is funny that way.
Yeah, it's funny. They bought the company. Mm-hmm. They were at the time really successful, growing really fast, but they have big operational issues. So we ended up merging with them and basically acquired them. So for the last 2 years, we have been doing a lot of work because we acquired them. Mm-hmm. We centralized all the operation in Colombia, and it's been a real challenge.
So you mentioned this before we started the interview, which is like a lot of startups in Colombia are probably going to face this also. They're going to get acquired, or they're going to merge.
Yeah.
What are these types of challenges that you face when you go this route?
There are many cultural issues. One thing you learn when you go regional is that there are cultural issues you have to manage, and you have to learn how each culture works and so on. It's more important than when you think initially. As entrepreneur, I think the best deals I have made are the ones when I have done M&A. As manager, I think it's the worst deals. It's a lot of work. It needs a lot of patience to see the results. Mm-hmm. And you need to push. But it's very important because these businesses need scale. Yeah. You need scale. In technology, you need scale. And in payments, even more. So one way of getting the scale is via M&A.
Okay, there's something else. Like your co-founder, you were saying how you were an introvert and everything. Your co-founder is much more extroverted, etc. A lot of people would find it strange. Like they would think that you're the technology guy, your co-founder is like the business guy, and it's kind of strange that the technology guy is the CEO. Like, how has it been being the technology guy and the CEO, which isn't something that, especially in Latin America, people usually think, oh, you're the programmer, you need a business guy to actually run it, but you're the technology guy running the company. Why do you think you've been able to do that?
That's a good question. I think it's more a matter of the team than who is the CEO. And every CEO has its strengths, its weaknesses. And the important thing is that he complements and he finds other people that bring something to the table. So I think we have reached a balance. It could be the other way around. But the important thing is that we have the balance. If we were only sales guys, maybe we would have operational problems. Only IT guys, maybe we wouldn't have enough merchants, enough clients. But in Latin America, there is, because the way businesses are done in Latin America is more based on facts, it's more based on relationship than on hard facts. So it's more important who you know than maybe, it's changing. With the internet, it's changing. But before it used to be who you know. So that's why it was so important to be extrovert. I know this one, I can help you, I will put you in contact with this one. But with the internet, it's changing. And internet is giving more importance to the product, to the service you are delivering, not so much to who you know. Because nowadays it's very easy to get in contact. If you want to talk with someone, it's very easy. You LinkedIn, you Google, Facebook. So it's changing a little bit around. So it's more important about the service, about the product, and that's where typically the introvert mind plays a role, because the introverts tends to be more, a little bit more thoughtful about the decisions they made.
Right.
But sometimes it's been a challenge, yeah.
So there's a lot of value in delivering on the promise. Like a lot of people focus on selling a promise, but actually delivering on the promise is so valuable.
When you're starting, it's really tough to get your first dollars, your revenue going. But once you get the revenue going, it shifts. How do you keep the pace? How do you deliver on what you are promising your merchants, your customers? How you improve your processes? How you make more efficient your organization? How do you need to change things around to be more effective? And of course, at the beginning, it's not so important, but as time passes by, it gets more and more important.
Okay, so last question. So, there's a lot of things that are really exciting about your space, and there's a lot of risks. So the exciting stuff is that mobile keeps on growing like gangbusters. E-commerce and mobile commerce is growing a ton, also in Colombia and Latin America. And then there's the risks that you mentioned, like there's these global players that are coming in. As you look to the next 5 years, like what's worrying you, what's exciting you, things like that.
We need to become one of those global players if we want to be successful. That's something.
And how do you do that?
So we are part of Naspers. We are very big. We change the way we work. We don't belong nowadays to Buscapé. We are independent segment.
Okay.
We are independent segment. We report directly to the CEO
of Naspers.
So I mean, my boss reports directly to the CEO of Naspers. So it's the way we have organized by segments is creating the synergies to unify all these different payment companies to be one really global player. Because I think that's the only way.
Okay. Well, I lied. That's not the last question. There's another question I want to ask you. You also are an angel investor.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing right now in terms of entrepreneurs, things that are happening? What do you feel about the way things are progressing, especially in Colombia or Latin America?
It's changing. I can't say more about Colombia. And what I can say is that it's changing because the quality of the entrepreneurs is an order of magnitude better right now. I mean, you see students from the best universities trying to do their own thing.
Which didn't happen before.
Didn't happen.
Yeah.
When I was starting my company, I was a good student. So I received a couple of offers from consultancies on the central bank and stuff like that. And everybody kept saying me, are you stupid? You are working this tiny, small startup. Why don't you go to work there? You have a corporate life there. And nowadays, everybody says, why don't you do your own thing? Or not everybody, but I mean, more
it's
people.
More accepted, yeah.
More accepted, more exciting. Mm-hmm. You see top students from technology, for example, IT students, they want to do their own thing, their own startup. So I think that will drive the growth.
Okay, so you're seeing really good prospects.
I mean, it's growing. The
Yeah.
e-commerce is growing really fast, but not so much from local startups, more from global companies or from big established ones.
Which is also good because these guys, the people who work there they get their chops. Like they learn a lot of stuff and then they can launch their own thing.
And I think the wave of disruption of the internet has not really come to Latin America, and not to Colombia.
How long do you think that'll take?
In the next 5 years, I mean disruption. I mean established business that are going to struggle, as Barnes and Noble did in the States. It is going to happen here. It has not happened yet, but it will.
You could make a case that maybe in transportation it's starting to happen.
Maybe in transportation.
But there's other industries.
I think transportation is the first one.
Right, I think so too.
I think that's the first industry where you see real disruption. And it will happen. Financial services, it will happen insurance, banking. Yeah, so it's going to be very exciting.
Okay.
It's going to be very exciting, I think.
Well, thanks a lot, Jose. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Alan.
Okay.
Thank you.